Okay, so in the last video we drew out our sketch, our final sketch, and this is a high quality sketch using all the techniques we've used. This is using all of the proper line types. It's to proportion of what the actual thing would be. It's accurate in that everything is lined up properly. And so we're ready to move on to the next thing, which is labeling the different things. So, so at the top, I'm going to write the same thing I wrote here on the printed version, materials list. So I'm going to write materials list, and in order to do this, I would like to use guidelines. So I'm going to lightly draw two lines about 1/8 inch apart. And I'm going to write materials list, all caps. Okay, I'm going to draw out a couple of these for my list. Now this design is a fairly simple design, and I only have a couple of materials on this design. Yours might be more complex, you might have much more going on. Okay, so materials list. I'm going to draw a little dot, and I'm going to write jar. Next is peanut butter. And the last thing that we will all have is an egg. Alright, so I only have 3 materials, so we need to label them in the views. Okay, so for this I do like to use a straight edge, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line like that. Now what this is this is an arrow. So I'm going to draw a really thin and narrow arrow, long and thin arrow, and then I like to draw like one straight little tail on this arrow. And right here I'm going to draw my guidelines, and I'm going to write egg. Next, I want to label the jar. Now, you want to label this in the view that makes the most sense. And sometimes you might want to label it twice. So, for example, the egg I labeled in this view, I think it's pretty obvious that this is the egg in this view, but in the top view it might not be as obvious, so I might label the egg again in this view. And I'm going to use the same technique. I'm going to draw my arrow. The arrowhead is long and narrow, and a little tail, and then I'm going to use my guidelines, and I'm going to write egg. Okay, so now we're ready to draw the jar. Label. I think I'm going to, for this one, I'm going to actually make an arrow that splits into 2, so that I show that the lid of the jar and the jar itself are part of the jar. Okay, my long narrow arrow for each of these, and then I want a little straight tail, and then my guidelines. This is my jar. And the last thing that I need to label is the peanut butter. So again, I'm going to draw it on a slight angle. I'm going to draw the arrowhead. Remember, the arrowhead is long and narrow. Draw straight tail. Draw my guidelines, very light. Now, peanut butter is a longer set of words, so I'm probably going to need 2 lines for this. And I'm going to write peanut butter. And the guidelines that you don't need, you can erase out of it. And now I might even, because I can see that the peanut butter is visible here, I don't necessarily need to label it over here. In this view, it's hard to identify exactly where the peanut butter would be. I think that's best in these views. But another thing that you can do is you can actually use the same words to label in both drawings if you decide to. So I draw that on a slight angle, draw one short tail, and my arrowhead here. And that way, this is called a leader. All these are called leaders. This has 2 leaders, but this title is doing double duty. And that is labeling and materials list.